Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The rearview mirror reflected a flawless visage lipstick reapplied with meticulous care. Eyes lined so precisely it looked effortless. Maddie tilted her head slightly, scanning for any rebellious strands of hair that might have escaped her carefully orchestrated hairstyle. Everything was exactly where it should be. She exhaled softly, satisfied. It was one of those tiny rituals she clung to, a small yet firm grip on control, a way of maintaining the polished image she'd never allowed herself to compromise. The car was tucked away in a secluded corner of the hotel's parking lot. Far from prying eyes and security cameras, a habit she had developed over the last several live-ins, a way of maintenance several weeks. Maddie knew there was no room for mistakes. It wasn't merely the risk of discovery that concerned her. It was the intoxicating rush of dancing along the edge of the forbidden, doing something completely undetectable, yet thrilling. She turned the key in the ignition and eased the car out, deliberately keeping her speed subdued. No sudden movements, no signs to attract attention. The radio played a soft, inconsequential song, filling the quiet, though her mind was elsewhere, still spinning with the lingering effects of her encounter with Ryan, her younger coworker with whom she shared clandestine, fevered moments, from the instant their eyes had met at a company event. Something magnetic had drawn her in, a pull unlike anything she experienced with Ethan, her husband. Ryan made her feel alive, noticed, and dangerously desirable, reigniting a sense of power and charm she hadn't felt in years. The sensation was addictive, irresistible. Over the weeks, their secret encounters grew more frequent, furtive texts during work hours, charged glances in meetings, clever excuses to vanish. For a few hours, I'll execute it with precision. That night had been no different. She had indulged once more in the illusion of an unbound passion, tantalizing and guiltless. At least on the surface, as she turned onto the main avenue, a thought pricked at the edges of her consciousness. She was going home earlier than she had claimed she would. She had told Ethan she'd be out late, fabricating a dinner with important clients as cover. Yet here she was, just past 11 at night, driving home without any need for further deception. A flicker of unease passed through her, a subtle alarm she almost immediately dismissed. Ethan trusted her implicitly. He always had, at a red light. She glanced at her phone, checking for messages from Ryan. Nothing. He never reached out first. That silent pact of theirs, constructed around careful boundaries and strict caution, assured their secret remained untouchable. Still, Maddie felt a faint sting of frustration. Perhaps a small part of her craved more from this dangerous liaison. She shook her head, erasing the thought before it could grow. There was no need to complicate what was meant to remain fleeting, thrilling, and completely contain a forbidden spark that could never, under any circumstances, evolve into real danger. The light changed. She eased the car forward, the crisp night air brushing against her as she neared her neighborhood. Driving home had its own strange allure, a ritualistic transition from the daring, secret Maddie back into the composed, perfect wife. The duality of her life felt both exhilarating and necessary. Ethan was likely asleep by now, exhausted after his long day at work, unaware of the small storm that swirled quietly outside the confines of their home. And she, tucked within the sanctuary of her car, allowed herself a brief, fleeting moment to exhale, to leave behind the reckless thrill of the night and step back into the role she performed so flawlessly. Predictable, methodical, a man wholly on routine as much as he relied on her. But that night, something was different. When she turned onto Her Street, she saw the office light on. Such a small detail, but it made her heart skip unexpectedly. Maddie pulled into the garage and paused for a few seconds. Hands still on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the light spilling through a crack in Ethan's office door. Her heart pounded harder now, not because of watch done a few hours earlier, but of what might be waiting for Heron the other side of that door. It wasn't typical for him to be up so late. Ethan valued his routine more than anything. He always ate dinner at thesame time, watched a documentary or read until he felt sleepy, and never failed to be in bed by 10:30. But tonight, he was there. She took a deep breath, trying to push away creeping unease. There was no reason to feel nervous. Maybe he was just reviewing contracts, organizing company papers. Or maybe he wanted to talk about something that couldn't wait until morning. Shay grabbed her purse and got out, carefully glassing the car door, as if the sound might somehow change the course of events. She made her way to the front door, her heels echoing softly on the cold garage floor. As soon as she turned the knob and went in, she noticed the absolute silence around her. No TV on in the living room, no music playing, not even the usual at-night house noises. Her eyes went straight to the office. The door was lightly open, the warm glow of a lamplit, the wooden shelves, and the silhouette of Ethan sitting at his desk, absorbed in papers. He didn't look up when she came in. Still working? She's trying to sound casual as she hung her purse on the rack by the door. Ethan slowly turned his chair toward her. His face looked calm, but there was something in his eyes Matta couldn't immediately decipher. "I had a long day," he said, folding his hands on the desk. "Had to make some tough decisions." She frowned. "Problems at the company." He tilted his head slightly as though weighing her question bare. He answered, "Let's just say a few people crossed a line they shouldn't have." His tone didn't change, but Maddie felt a chill run down her spine. "Oh," she murmured, forcing a smile. "Happened." Ethan picked up a pennant, twirled it between his fingers for a moment. "I had to fire 2 employees." Maddie felt her stomach clench. "Really? What happened?" "They were secretly in bed." "That's against company policy." A suffocating silence fell for a moment. Maddie felt like she was tumbling from somewhere far to high with nothing to cling to. He knew. Her heart started hammering in her chest. She tried to keep her face calm, but she felt the blood draining away. Well, her voice almost failed her. "Faux ruses exist for a reason, right?" Ethan watched her intently. "Exactly. Employees who put their emotions above the company's ethics show they can't separate their professional life from their personal life. And if they can't do that, they don't belong there." She swallowed hard. Was it talking about those 2 employees or about her? Each word seemed charged with an unspoken weight of veiled insinuation. Was Ethan testing her or just talking about a business decision without a hidden agenda? Maddie couldn't tell, and not knowing was what scared her the most. She forced a short, dry laugh. "Well, it sounds like you did what you had to do." Ethan kept his gaze on her for a few more seconds before leaning back in his chair. "Yes, I did what needed to be done." Silence again. Maddie had to get out off there. "Think I'll take a shower and go to bed. It's been a long day for me, too." Ethan gave the faintest smile. "Sure, go get some rest." She nodded quickly and turned, walking down the hallway, feeling his eyes on her back. She went up the stairs slowly, each step feeling higher than usual. Once she entered the bedroom, she closed the door behind her and let out the breath. She hadn't realized she was. She leaned on the vanity, staring at her own reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were wide, her breathing rapid. Ethan knew. There was no proof, no direct accusation. But that look, that calculated way of speaking, he knew, and that terrified her more than any clear-cut discovery ever could. The next morning, Maddie jolted awake. All night, her sleep had been broken and restless. As if her mind refused to switch off, Ethan's words still echoed in her head, repeating like a sinister mantra. Employees who put their emotions above the company's ethics. She tried to shake off her unease. She needed to focus. She had a big day ahead. At the office, the atmosphere felt different. Maybe it was just paranoia. But Matta sensed her coworkers lingering on her whenever she passed by. It felt like a secret was floating around, some unspoken piece of information she didn't yet know. Shook her head. Nonsense. When she sat at her desk, she saw a thick envelope waiting for her. Her name was written on it by hand with no return address. A wave of uneasiness washed over her. She looked around, nothing's a news. Swallowing her apprehension, she opened the envelope and took out Theckentons. The moment her eyes landed on those first pages, it felt like Theffler vanished beneath her. Divorce papers. Her fingers trembled as Chef flipped through them. Every line already signed, every clause spelled out. Ethan had everything ready? Everything. But that wasn't all. Tucked between Theppages was a set of photographs. Tease's stomach twisted. They were of her with Ryan. The two of them going into the hotel in the parking lot in moments that should never have even visible to anyone else. A hot haze flooded her mind. Her body froze. Butin sighed. She felt like she was free-falling from a tall building with no ground below. The air felt heavy, each heartbeat echoing painfully in her ears. He knew, and worse, he'd planted everything. She tried to make sense of it. How? Since when? Who helped him? Blood pounded in her temples. She snatched up her phone with trembling fingers and dialed Ryan's number. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Deeper panic started taking hold. Her cases heaved up and down too fast. Shay grabbed her purse and hurried out of their room, ignoring the curious stares around her. Once in the parking lot, she fired off a frantic message. Ryan, call Menno. Nothing. No response. She got into her car, sat behind the wheel, and took a deep breath to gather her thoughts. She had to talk to him. She had to figure out what was happening. She typed another message. Where are you? What's going on? Her phone stayed silent. She checked time. None of this made sense. Ryan always picked up always. Her mind started putting the pieces together. Ethan knew. Ryan got fired now, he'd vanished. Stabbing chill ran through her spine. Her fingers clenched the steering wheel. Tight. This wasn't just a divorce. It was retaliation. And she still had no idea what else might be coming. She was still shaking when suddenly the memory of the previous night struck her. Ethan had lead. He never fired anyone. His company didn't even have such a strict policy on office relations. He wasn't talking about employees. He was talking about her. He'd known everything already and decided to mess with her head, planting fair and letting her wallow in doubts and assumptions before hitting her with final blow. Maddie felt a shiver skitter across her skin. That calculated coolness. The casual tone, the careful watch on her every micro-expression. It all clicked now. Ethan wanted her to feel hunted before she even realized she was a target. He orchestrated this in a cruel, methodical way, letting her feel safe in her own illusion until Thema meant. He chose to yank her out of it. And now, alone in her car, no Ryan, no's worse. Her marriage collapsed into an envelope. Maddie realized just how vulnerable she really was. She was still sitting there staring at that envelope in the passenger seat when she heard a knock on her window. It was her boss, Mr. Caldwell, looking at her seriously with his arms crossed, waiting for her to step out. Panic flared in her chest as she opened the door and got out slowly, trying to keep it together. "Maddie, can we talk in my office?" he asked bluntly. She only nodded, her legs feeling weak as she followed him down the hallway. The usual office buzz sounded louder than ever. Or maybe it was just her own paranoia. When they entered his office, he closed the door behind them and went strato the point. "I got this envelope yesterday," he said, tossing a duplicate off the one she'd just seen onto his desk. "But I decided to act on it today." Maddie's stomach lurched. Ethan had just ended their marriage. He wanted to destroy everything. Ryan was fired. Caldwell went on watching her every reaction, and your situation is under review by the board. They haven't made a final decision yet, but I need you to wait. She held her breath, hoping for something. Anything that might ease that crushing tension, but he simply stepped back and crossed his arms. "If you'd like to go home while you wait, go ahead." It felt like a punch in the gut. The message was clear. Her future at the campaign hung by a thread. Without responding, Maddie rushed off. The elevator seemed to take forever to reach lobby, and as soon as the door slid a pin, she ran to her car. With each passing mile, her anxiety grew, mixing with a deeper fear she couldn't name. But when she turned onto her street, she saw something that made her stop breathing. The front door was open. In the hallway, right by the entrance were her suitcases. She hit the brakes hard, jumped out off the car, and stepped inside. Ethan was there, waiting, standing with an unflinching look on his face. No anger, no bitterness, just a cutting coldness. Thought more than any shout ever could. Held out two things: a ring of keys and a separation check. Maddie stared at the keys in her hand, trying to piece it all together. They were for a small apartment they owned downtown, an investment they'd planned to rent out soon. But now Ethno's giving it to her as her permanent destination. It wasn't a gesture of kindness. It was a clear message. She no longer had a home there. Their marriage didn't exist anymore. This was the only concession he was willing to make. I had it all planned out, Maddie. I was just waiting for the right moment. She blinked, confessed, feeling desperation rise like a tsunami inside her. Ethan, please, if you think you can play with people's trust, then you'll have to learn to live with the consequences. She tried to take his arm, to beg to find a trace of the man who's to love her, but he was already gone. Not physically, but in every other way. The true weight of what she'd done finally crushed her, and this time there was no escape. The small apartment wassalant. The white walls and plain furniture felt cold and impersonal. It had never been a home, just an investment. No history, no memories. Now it was all she had. Nada dropped her bag on the kitchen counter and sat on the couch, weighed down by loneliness. The noise of traffic from the Avenue below was a constant reminder that life kept spinning out there, unmoved by the cows inside her. For the 10th time that day, she grabbed her phone and scrolled out Ryan's contact. His name glowed on the screen like an open wound, a reminder of watched lost. She pressed the call button, every ring stretching her agony. When she finally heard the line pick up, a surge of hope flickered until his voice spoke from the other side. Please don't contact me again. All you've done is bring misery into my life. Silence followed, brutal and final. Maddie clutched her phone tightly, as if she couldn't make those words sap her, but she couldn't. Neither could he, nor Ethan. She was alone. A tear rolled down her cheek, and then another, until her vision blurred and a sub she'd been holding in finally escaped. She felt small, crushed by it of what she'd done. She wasn't just crying for Ryan or Ethan. She cried Becca's for the first time. She truly felt the consequences of her mistakes in a way she couldn't escape. She spent the rest of the day without eating, without speaking, without even changing her position, just staring off, trying to figure out where her perfect life had first started to unravel. When evening full, she realized she needed some sort of answer, some direction. She picked up her phone and messaged her boss. Should I come in tomorrow or wait? Few minutes later, the reply came. Take the week off. We'll talk on Monday. That was it. No certainty, no promise, just more waiting. In the days that followed, her world narrowed to that apartment. She didn't go out for walks. She didn't answer calls. She didn't look for distractions. She just stayed there, living with her remorse, going over every error. Every bad decision in her mind. She tried contacting Ethan a few times, first by text, then with calls that went unanswered, but he was irreversibly asked. There was no plea or explanation that could bring him back. Time crawled by, each day feeling longer than the one before. Sunday arrived, and with it the realization that she'd face her fate the next day. On Monday morning, Cher turned to the company with a knot in her stomach. She walked into her boss's office and sat down in front of him, bracing for whatever would happen. His gaze was serious, but not hostile. The board decided You can stay with the company, he began. And for a second, Maddie felt relief, but on one condition. She held her breath, due to being transferred to another branch. On the other side of the country, her heart sank. She wasn't expecting that. Such a drastic move. A new city, no familiar faces. But then she realized that maybe this was what she needed. Ethan wouldn't be coming back. Ryan hated her daughter life. There no longer existed. She took a deep breath, feeling the first glimmer of clarity she'd had in days. I accept, her boss nodded, satisfied. And so, without further debate, Medill left behind everything she knew and set out for a new life. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.